Dear students, today we are going to start our new lesson, new chapter, plant breeding. So plant breeding, which includes within the 10th unit, that is economic botany. The 10th unit of economic botany consists of two chapters, namely plant breeding and economically useful plants and entrepreneurial botany. So these are the two chapters which include in the unit number 10, economic botany. Now we shall discuss about plant breeding in chapter 9. What is plant breeding? So in order to improve the high yield quality of crop plants by traditional or conventional or even in the modern technology. So this is called as plant breeding. So what is economic botany? Economic botany is a study of relationship between people and economically important plants. What is economically important plants? So some of the plants are providing us very good quality of important materials for us. So they are being very much useful in various forms like food, medicine, or oil yielding plants, or medicinal plants, or food yielding plants, or fiber yielding plants. In such a way, various kinds of economically useful plants. So these are deals with economic botany. So economic botany, which is a branch of science or botany, which deals with economically how the plants are useful to mankind. So economic botany is nothing but it is a study of relationship between the people and economically important plants. That means how the plants are useful to mankind. This is nothing but economic botany. So economic botany is a study of relationship between people and economically important plants. It explores the way by which humans use the plants for food, medicine, and some other uses. Economic botany intersects many fields of science, including established disciplines like agronomy. What do you mean by agronomy? Agronomy is nothing but rural commercial plants or rural economy, or anthropology. This is also will be very much useful to study in anthropology. Anthropology is nothing but study of human being. Archaeology. That means you might have studied about in olden days some of the people might be lived. These are we can able to study with the help of archaeological evidences or any fossil forms. With the help of it we can able to study about the old and traditional culture. This study is called archaeology. This is also very much useful in chemistry. Trade means we have to sell or vyabari. Commerce means economics, பொருளாதாரம். So in such a way, various types of field is also getting benefited from the field of discipline called economic botany. Now we are going to discuss about what is the relationship between humans and plants. From the very early times onwards, human beings have coexisted with the plants, which play a vital role in their survival because they are providing food, shelter, and cloth. That is why plants are providing us all the needs for life. That's why they are very integral part of our life. The plants and human being are interrelationship with each other. Through a long process of trial and error, our ancestors, our old people, earlier people, have selected hundreds of oil plants from the various parts of the world for their specific uses. So the knowledge of the plants and its applications have led to development of humans and their civilization in many ways. Then later on, what are the plants have been used? So if it is useful for us, then mankind have been utilized for domestication. So then next we are going to see about domestications of plants. What is domestications? If the wild plants are very much useful for us, Then we are making this wild plant into our regular plant as a crop plant or cultivated plant. This is called domestication of plants. So domestication is a process of bringing the plant species under the control of humans and gradual changing it through a careful selection, genetic alteration and handling so that it is a more useful to mankind. So domesticated species are renewable resources that have provided food and other benefits to human beings. So such a type of plants, more than 90 plants so far it is identified as it is very much useful to mankind for food. Apart from this, these are also very much useful to yielding medicinal value or oil yielding or fiber yielding or any other way of purposes. These are very much useful. So these are considered as economical botany. The possible changes in the plant species due to domestications are adaptation to a greater diversity of environment and a wider geographical range. So the wild species, usually they used to be living in wild or natural habitat of which is very far away from human life, they can be cultivated. Then immediately they will be make the plants to adapt. So this is called adaptation to a greater diversity of environment, our natural environment, and wide range of geographical range, whether near to the pond or near to the desert area or even in the normal tropical area or near to the seashore area, whatever may be the geographical range, they try to be adapt. Simultaneous and uniform flowering and fruiting maybe takes place if the wild species are domesticated. Then lack of shattering or scattering of seeds. So if it is wild species, there is no proper way of seeds dispersal. But if you are showing in a domestication, a perfect way of showing in the agricultural field maybe takes place. So due to domestication, the plants or the yield of fruits or seed increase their size. This is another important possible changes. Change from perennial plant to annual plant. Usually the wild species is perennial. Perennial means they can survive for many years. So they will make into annual. Annual means within a year or within few seasons or within few months or even 1 month itself they can able to complete their life cycle. This is called annual habit. Change in breeding system. We are making the system of changing the habitat of reproductive method, increasing yield. So usually they used to give certain value, but now this will make to increase more amount. Increase disease resistance and pest resistant plant can be developed. Then developing seedless parthenocarpic fruits are also can be developed by domestication. So the domestication is also enhancing the color of the seeds, color of the flower, color of the fruits, color of the leaves, and appearance, palatability and nutritional composition also can be made beautiful. So lot of advantages are there by domestications of wild species. Due to domestication, there is a special field arises. This is called agriculture. So origin of agriculture. Archaeological evidences it is proved that for earlier record of agriculture is found in the Fertile Crescent region in and around the Euphrates and Tigris rivers valley. Euphrates and Tigris are very, very big river valley. Near to the river valleys, this agriculture originally it is developed approximately 12,000 years ago. The earlier Greek and Roman naturalists like Theophrastus, Dioscorides, Pliny the Elder and Galen lay down the scientific foundation in the understanding of origin and domestication of cultivated plants. So this is originally the origin of agriculture. So the cultivated and domesticated wild species become into domestication in the form of agriculture which have been raised 12,000 years ago in the valley of Euphrates and Tigris river. Now we are going to see about organic agriculture. What does mean by organic agriculture? Nowadays we are not using organic agriculture. We are using chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides, chemical insecticides, everything artificial manner. But organic agriculture is nothing but the agriculture which does not harm the nature, does not pollute the nature, does not pollute the soil, air and water. Such a type of agriculture is called as organic agriculture. So, organic agriculture is an alternative agricultural system which originated early in the 20th century in reaction to rapidly changing farming practices. So, it is a production of system that sustains the health of soils, ecosystems and people relies on ecological processes, biodiversities and cycles adapted to local conditions rather than use of input with adverse effect. So it is highly dangerous nowadays what we are using the agricultural practices with various chemicals which are harming the nature, which are harming the ecosystem as well. Now we are going to see about biofertilizers. Biofertilizers is the original fertilizers which will make the plants to survive without harming any nature, without harming environment, without harming the ecosystem. So these are the biological product which are using as a fertilizers, which are using as a manure. So this is called as biofertilizers. Usually biofertilizers are defined as the preparation containing living cells or latent cells of efficient strains of microorganisms that help to crop plants uptake of nutrients by their interaction in the rhizosphere. Rhizosphere means the space or the space which are being around the roots are called as rhizosphere. So rhizospheres when applied through seeds or soils. That means lot of microorganisms like various types of bacteria and some of the fungus which can able to convert the even cyanobacteria as well. They can able to convert atmospheric nitrogen into nitrates and nitrate. Some of the microorganisms which can able to simplized form of phosphatase. That means lot of phosphate materials which are present in the soil, they are unable to take up by the plants because they are being in complex form and mobilization is also very much slow. So in such occasions, these microorganisms will be making to simplify form as well as solidify form and also which can help the plants to mobilize these nutrients like phosphates. Such a type of things will be done by these microorganisms like bacteria. These are considered as biofertilizers, bioorganisms. These biofertilizers could be also called as microbial cultures or bioinoculants, or even if we can call it bacterial inoculants or bacterial fertilizers. They are efficient in fixing nitrogen, solubilizing phosphate and decomposing cellulose, because cellulose is a complex carbohydrate. So complex carbohydrate, it is not easy to break down. So in such a case, these bacteria can able to break down the cellulose with the help of enzyme called cellulase. So the decomposing the cellulose is also done by these microorganisms like bacteria. They are designed to improve the soil fertility, plant growth and also the number and biological activity of beneficial microorganism in the soil. They are eco-friendly, very importantly. They are eco-friendly, organic agro inputs and are more efficient and cost effective. We need not spend more money than commercial fertilizers. Usually we are using for commercial fertilizers, we have to spend more money and also which may spoil the soil, which may soil the environment, which are spoiling the water as well. So lot of biofertilizers are available. These may be classified into 5 different categories. Into nitrogen fixing biofertilizers, phosphorus solubilizing biofertilizers, phosphorus mobilizing biofertilizers, biofertilizers for micronutrients, plant growth promoting rhizobacteria. So one by one we can able to see. So the nitrogen fixing bacteria fertilizers which are being, some of the bacteria may be freely living on the soil like Azotobacter, Clostridium, Anabaena, Nostoc. These are all bacteria and cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, which are freely living on the soil, which can able to fix atmospheric nitrogen. Some of the bacteria like Rhizobium, Anabaena, Azole, these are symbiotic. That means they can being along with some other plants. Some of the bacteria like Azospirillum are associative symbiotic with living organisms. These are all nitrogen fixing biofertilizers. Similarly, phosphorus solubilizing biofertilizers. So phosphorus is solubilized by various bacteria and fungi. For example, Bacillus subtilis, Pseudomonas striata. These are the bacteria which can able to solubilize the phosphorus or phosphate. Similarly, some of the fungi like Benzelium aspergillus, which are also solubilizing the phosphate. Some of the phosphate mobilizing biofertilizers like arbuscular mycorrhiza, these are fungus like Glomus and Scutelospora. Similarly, ectomycorrhiza like Amanita, these are all mobilizing the phosphorus material into plants through the roots. They are called as mobilizing biofertilizers. Similarly, some of the micronutrients which are available in the form of various bacteria, some of the silicates and zinc solubilizer which will be done by bacteria like Bacillus. Some of the plant growth promoting rhizobacteria like Pseudomonas fluorescens, which can able to fixing or which are acting like a plant growth promoting material like phytohormones. Now we shall discuss about one by one. Some of the important bacteria like Rhizobium, these are being symbiotic association with higher plants like leguminous plants. Usually if you see the leguminous plants are having root nodules. These Rhizobium bacteria are lived in root nodules. So here both the bacteria like Rhizobium as well as the leguminous plant mutually benefited. So that is why these are called as symbiosis. So the symbiotic association between these Rhizobium bacteria and leguminous plant is very common, which will be fixing the atmospheric nitrogen into nitrite, nitrate, ammonia by the Rhizobium bacteria and give to the plant. So biofertilizers containing Rhizobium bacteria are called Rhizobium for biofertilizers culture. So symbiotic bacteria that reside inside the root nodules convert the atmospheric nitrogen into a bioavailable form to the plant. This nitrogen fixing bacterium, when applied to the soil, undergoes multiplication and fixes the atmospheric nitrogen in the soil. So Rhizobium is the best suited for the paddy field, which increase yield by 15 to 40% every year, or the yield will be increased. What a beauty. Next one we are going to see about Azolla. Azolla is a fan. Even a small piece of Azolla, if you drop down in agricultural field of paddy field, within 1 week it will be spread and increase. So this will not be much cost. And moreover, you need not spend money as well. This Azolla is a fern, aquatic fern. Aquatic fern means staurophytic plant, which can be able to fix the atmospheric nitrogen. Such a wonderful plant, this one, Azolla. Azolla is a free-floating water fern that fixes the atmospheric nitrogen in association with nitrogen-fixing blue-green algae called Anabaena azole. It is used as biofertilizers for wetland rice cultivation and is known to contribute around 40 to 60 kilogram per hectare per crops. It is a beautiful nature. It is really amazing. The agronomic potential of Azolla is quite significant, particularly for increasing in the field of rice crops. So this is Azolla in paddy field. This is paddy. In between these plants are Azora. Azora is a aquatic fan plant. So these are increasing the yield of rice crops as it quickly decomposes into soil as well. Next we are going to see about arbuscular mycorrhiza. So arbuscular mycorrhiza is a group of fungus which are being near to the angiospermic plant. So these are doing a lot of important things. They increase the resistance to foliar pathogen. If there is any pathogens are there, they will not be having any stress to the plant. It is increase the drought and salt tolerance. Nutrient transfer. So the mycorrhiza or arbuscular mycorrhiza which are being around the roots of the plant, they can able to mobilize the nutrients into the roots of the plant. And moreover, they can decompose and solubilizing phosphate, zinc, water, nitrate. In such a way, various types of nutrients are also maybe absorbed by arbuscular mycorrhiza to send to or transport to the plant through roots. So it is increasing resistance to heavy metal toxicity as well. So local resistance to root pathogens as well. Phosphate depletion is also done by these arbuscular mycorrhiza. Nutrient transfer via root hairs. These are all will be done by arbuscular mycorrhiza. So arbuscular mycorrhiza is formed by the symbiotic association between certain Phaegomycetes fungi and angiospermic roots. They have the ability to dissolve the phosphates found in abundance in soil. Apart from increasing the availability of phosphorus, arbuscular mycorrhiza provide necessary strength to resist the disease, as well as germs and unfavorable weather conditions. It also assures water availability. That's all about arbuscular mycorrhiza. Now we are going to see about seaweed liquid fertilizer. This is seaweed kelps. So it is a brown algae which are living inside the seawater. So they can able to convert as a fertilizer. So that is why these are called as seaweed liquid fertilizer. Seaweed liquid fertilizer, SLF, is nothing but seaweed liquid fertilizer contain various phytohormones like cytokines, gibberellins and auxin. So they are providing lot of phytohormones. Phytohormones means these are the chemical substances which can stimulate the growth and development. Such a type of chemicals which are present inside the seaweed. Apart from this, these are also consist of certain macro and micronutrients as well. Most of the seaweeds based fertilizers are made from kelps like brown algae, which grows a length of 150 meters. So it is growing very long and length. Seaweed's liquefied fertilizer is not only organic but also eco-friendly. They will not make any harm to the environment. The alginates in the seaweed that react with the metals in the soil and form long cross-linked polymers in the soil. So it is decomposing the metal poison. These polymers improve the crumbling in the soil, swell up when they get wet and retain moisture for a long time. So even if you sowing the seaweed liquefier, what will happen? They can absorb the water. This water will be retained for a long time around the plant on the surface of the soil in the agricultural field. So this is a huge importance. Most valuable things about this kelp. They are especially useful in organic gardening, which provides carbohydrates for the plants. Seaweed has more than 70 minerals: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. In such a way, more than 70 minerals are present in this seaweed like kelps. which are providing a lot of vitamins and enzymes as well. It promotes vigorous growth, improves resistance to various plant diseases, to frost and diseases. Seeds soaked in seaweeds extract, germinate such rapidly and develop a better root system. That's all about seaweed, liquefied biofertilizer. Next we are going to say about biopesticide. What is meant by pesticide? Pest means insects. Side means chemical. Chemicals which kill various types of insects like pole. We usually use various chemicals to kill these insects. But if you are using certain bacteria, certain fungus, if it is grown naturally, they can kill these pests and insects. These are called as biopesticides. These are eco-friendly, they are non-toxic, they are cheaper. Such a type of biopesticides we used to use in agriculture. This will be more beneficial. So biopesticides are the biological agents used for control of plant pests. They are in high use due to they are non-toxic, very cheaper and eco-friendly as well. The characteristic features as compared to chemical or synthetic pesticides. Biopesticides have become an integral component of pest management in terms of environmental and health issues attributed to the use of chemicals in agriculture. See here, these are various types of fungus which can able to infect the insect. Here see, these are the fungus which are grown on insect, will kill this insect. Here see, some of the insects are these are infected by these fungus. Then later on they will die. So these are called as entomopathogenic fungi which can able to kill the insect. These are Beauveria fungi. This Beauveria fungi which can able to kill these insects. So these are acting like a biopesticides. Trichoderma. So this is Trichoderma. So Trichoderma species are free living fungi. So these are a group of fungi which are freely living fungi. These Trichoderma that are commonly living in soil and root ecosystem. They have been recognized in biocontrol agent for very many reasons. The control of plant diseases, the ability to enhance root growth development, they can increase the crop productivity, they can increase the resistance to the biotic stress and uptake and use of nutrients. These are all will be benefited by Trichoderma species of fungi. Similarly, these fungi are called as Beauveria species of fungi. Beauveria species of fungi is an entomopathogenic fungus that grows naturally in soils throughout the world. It acts as a parasite and various arthropod species. Arthropods means insects. These are different kinds of insects. They can kill these arthropods of insect species, causing a wide muscardine disease without affecting the plant health and also growth of the plant. It also controls damping of tomato caused by Rhizoctonia solani. These are all beneficial of biofertilizers. Now we are going to see about green manuring. What is green manuring? So we are increasing nitrogen, phosphorus, potash with the help of chemical fertilizers. Instead of chemical fertilizers, if you are using nitrogen fixing plants like leguminous plants, these are called as green manuring. So green manuring is defined as a growing of green manure crops and use of these crops directly in the field by plowing. Plowing means ulugurathu in Tamil. One of the main objectives of the green manuring is to increase the content of the nitrogen in the soil. Also, it helps in improving the structure and physical properties of the soil. The most important green manure crops like Crotalaria gentiana, Tephrosia purpurea, Kolingi, Indigofera tinctoria. These are all various types of leguminous plants which can be able to increase the nitrogen. Green manuring can be practiced as green in situ manuring or green leaf manuring. Green in situ manuring means after cropping we can show these seeds of this green manure. Then they can grow. Afterwards we have to plow. So these are called green in situ manuring, refers to growing up green manure crops in the border of rows or intercrops along with the main crops. For example, sunhemp, cowpea, green gram, etc. Whereas green leaf manuring is applications of green leaves and twigs of leaves or shrubs or plants growing in wasteland and field burns. These are collected and that should be kept in agricultural field. Then we have to plow it. So this is another method. One method is in situ cultivating method. Another one is we have to show now. That means they are green manuring which will be thrown up, or these green leaf manuring is applied by green leaves. So in two forms we can able to give or increase green manuring in agricultural field. The important plant species useful for green leaf manuring are cassia. Cassia means avare. In yellow color flower they used to bloom. These are available on the roadsides. Similarly, Sesbania grandiflora, Azadiracta indica, Vembu, Vapor, Dilonix regia, Pongamia pinnata, Pungamaram, Punga ile. So these are also can be used as green manure. Now we are going to see about plant breeding techniques. What is plant breeding? Plant breeding is the science of improvement of crop varieties with higher yield, better quality, resistant to diseases and shorter duration which are suitable to particular environment. So this is called as plant breeding. So plant breeding is nothing but it is a branch of science which deals with improvement of crop varieties with higher yield, better quality, resistant to diseases and shorter duration which are suitable for particular environment. In other words, if you say it is a purposeful manipulation of plant species in order to create desired genotype and phenotype for the benefit of humans. In early days, plant breeding activities were based mainly on skills and ability of persons involved. But as the principles of genetics and cytogenetics have been elucidated, breeding methods such as selection, introduction, hybridization, ploidy, mutation, tissue culture and biotechnological technique were designed to develop improved crop varieties. What are the objectives of plant breeding? What are the aims of plant breeding? Due to this plant breeding, we can able to increase the yield, increase the vigor and variety of crops. We can able to increase the tolerance of environmental condition, tolerance of salinity, tolerance of temperature of various crops, and tolerance against drought is also can be developed. With the help of plant breeding, we can able to prevent a premature falling buds, fruits, even flowers. So this plant breeding is also can able to help us to improve synchronous maturity, uniform maturity. It is also very much help to develop resistance to pathogens and pests. It is also help us to develop photosensitive and thermosensitive varieties of plants can be produced. Then what are the steps to be taken in plant breeding? So various method to be followed. We have to domesticate the wild species of useful plants. We can introduce plant introduction. We can cross with hybridization techniques. We can collect some important hybrid varieties of germplasm collections. And also we have to use the modern technology like genetic engineering, tissue culture, ploidy, mutation. These are all coordinate together to form a creation of genetic variation. Then selection, evaluation, and release as a variety, seed multiplication and distribution. So this flowchart given us an idea about these are traditional method, these are modern method. So this conventional method and modern method combined together to make a creation of genetic variation in the agricultural field to improve high yield, resistant to diseases and high potential. That to be selected and evaluate and release as a variety. Then we have to improve and multiply the seeds and distribute to the farmer. So these are the steps to be taken in plant